What's going on, ladies, gents, and kids of all ages? It is Eric coming back at you once again from the Nerd Cave, and today we have another very exciting deck tech video for you. Thank you guys so much for the love that you've shown on the last couple deck tech videos. Thanks for your comments. You've given me some great ideas. We are going to have some fan-requested deck lists coming very soon, so if you have any thoughts for a deck list you'd like to see or something you think that hasn't been explored enough in the current meta, definitely drop it in the comments below. That being said, as always, big shout out to the Patreons for making the giveaways on the channel possible, and just for helping to support the channel in the long term. You guys are fantastic. If you want to check out the Patreon, it's only $1 to do so. We've had some big announcements over there recently, and we've got some Patreon exclusive giveaways coming in the near future. Speaking of giveaways, we're coming up on 3,000 subscribers and another channel giveaway, so if you haven't gotten subscribed, now is a great time to do so. Without any further ado, we're going to jump into talking about today's deck list, which is going to be a new and improved version of Ruby Amethyst that's totally different than what you may expect. So the first card we're playing, and this isn't going to be as much of a surprise to you, is going to be 3 Diablo Obedient Raven, an absolute staple in Ruby Amethyst. I think the bigger surprise here is probably that we're only playing 3 and not 4. Still a super good card. I think it's still a fair argument for 4, so if you want to tweak the counts a little bit, I don't see anything wrong with going to 4 of these. But he has a 1-cost Inkable 0/1 stat line questing for 1, with when this character is banished you may draw a card. Just a fantastic ability to keep your foot on the gas, keep those cards coming. Speaking of keeping your foot on the gas in the early game, we are on 3 Maleficent Biding Her Time, a 1-cost uninkable 1/1 stat line questing for 2. Fantastic way to get some early game tempo. Since you have bounce shenanigans, you can potentially take advantage of her more than once, and we do have another way to potentially take advantage of her in this deck, which we're going to talk about a little bit more when we get further down the line. The next 2 cards we're going to talk about together because they are effectively the same, and that is going to be 3 Olaf Friendly Snowman and 1 Minnie Mouse Always Classy 1-cost inkable characters with a 1/3 stat line questing for 1. The 1/3 stat line is what's going to be very important here. You may be asking why play 3 Olaf and 1 Minnie instead of just playing 4 Olaf. Well, the answer is I only have 3 foil Olafs, and now you may ask yourself, well, do you have more than 1 foil Minnie? I sure do, but I'm going to play as many Olafs as I can because Olaf is better than Minnie in every way and is hands down the best character in Frozen. If you disagree, everyone's entitled to their opinion, but you're wrong. Next up, jumping over to the 2-cost slot, we are on 4 Madam Mim Snake, a 2-cost inkable 3/3 stat line questing for 1. Fantastic way to take advantage of those 1-drop characters by bouncing them back and then getting them down again, or any of those other bigger characters with those enter play trigger, or sometimes if you just need to heal something, it can be a good way to get it off the field, let it kind of heal up, and get it back down. Next up, and what I think is by far the most overlooked card that has hit in set 7, is 4 Queen of Hearts Losing Her Temper, a 2-cost inkable 1/4 stat line questing for 1. With while this character has damage, so she has to have damage on her, she's going to get +3, effectively becoming a 4/4 that is a static stat line, prevents her from getting brawled, prevents her from getting Sisu'd, all that kind of stuff, and makes her a pretty big board threat even with damage on her. So you start looking at cards like Teeth and Ambitions, they start looking a lot better with something like Queen of Hearts. Not to mention, she's just good in her own right. You could take a challenge into something, deal 1 damage to it, and then all of a sudden your Queen of Hearts is a huge blocker sitting there. And of course, with that Queen of Hearts that is so good with Teeth and Ambitions, we do have to have Teeth and Ambitions in the list. This is going to be comboing with multiple cards, including those Olafs and those Minis with their 1/3 stat line, as well as, of course, that Queen of Hearts, and those Mim Snakes being able to get potentially an Olaf with damage on it back in your hand if that's what needs to happen. But Teeth and Ambitions is a 2-cost inkable action song, meaning those 2-cost characters, including that new Queen of Hearts, can sing it. It deals 2 damage to a chosen character of yours to deal 2 damage to another chosen character, potentially wiping out a Cinderella in that matchup, or some of those new Lady and the Tramp characters if you're in that match. And not only that, but it's gonna, like I mentioned, make that Queen of Hearts huge. You make that Queen of Hearts a 4/4, even with 2 damage on her, she does take out a Daisy without getting banished, which can be really good. Teeth and Ambitions is going to combo with several things that we're doing here. Next up in the 3-cost slot, a foil I'm very happy I bought when they were under like $10. Yay, foils, because this card has gotten absolutely crazy. Still one of the best cards in the game, I stand by that. That is Madam Mim Fox, a 3-cost inkable 4/3 stat line questing for 1. And when you play this character, banish her, return another chosen character to your hand, and she has Rush, so she is going to deal with all those early game issues. She is going to take out pretty much any other character. There are definitely some characters out there now that she is going to trade with, so she may not live through it, but she is going to take out pretty much every character in the early game. The other new card that made me want to build this deck, and a card that I think is also being pretty overlooked right now, is going to be for Mother Gothel, Fylvain Sorceress, a 3-cost inkable 1/4 stat line questing for 1 with whenever one of your characters challenges, you may move 1 damage counter from chosen character to chosen opposing character, and it is worth noting that that damage counter move is going to happen before damage is dealt. So if you have something like Queen of Hearts with the 2 damage on her from Teeth and Ambitions, and you challenge in with her with a Mother Gothel on the board, you are moving that damage first, effectively making her a 4/3 stat line at that point, potentially preventing her from dying. Also worth noting, when you're moving that damage from Mother Gothel, if you move it to a character and that character is banished by the damage counter being moved, no damage is dealt in that challenge. So if you have something where potentially you'd be taking a trade, but the damage counter being moved is going to banish that opposing character, your character is not going to get banished. So remember how that trigger works, because it is incredibly important and is potentially going to save you not only characters getting banished, but it is going to put you in a better position with moving those damage counters to keep your characters on the board. Next up, still in the 3-cost slot, we're on 2 Merlin Crab, a 3-cost inkable 3/3 stat line questing for 1 with when you play this character and when he leaves, you're going to go ahead and give something Challenger +3, obviously with the bounce package. The when he leaves trigger is super important. That's why we're not playing more crabs. We are on the 4 snakes, 4 foxes, so I think 2 crabs is pretty comfortable, but when you need them, they're great to have around, especially in a deck where you're looking to challenge to move those damage counters around. Next up in the 3-cost slot, a card we haven't seen in Ruby Amethyst in a while, but you'll see in a minute why I am playing that card. That is going to be 3 Maleficent Sorceress, a 3-cost inkable 2/2 stat line, so not a very good stat line for the ink, questing for 1, but when it comes into play, it's going to draw you a card, so she's always going to be replacing herself, and she's going to combo nicely with a card we're going to talk about in a second. Although she does combo nicely with this card, this is not the one that I am referring to, but we are on 3 Friends on the Other Side, a 3-cost inkable action song, draw 2 cards, still really good, especially when you have a lot of 3 and 4-cost characters that are only questing for 1 anyway. Sometimes just drawing cards can be better than getting that 1 quest in and gaining a single lore. But the card that is going to combine really quite well with that Maleficent that we were just talking about is going to be the most diabolical scheme. This is also part of the reason we are on the 1-cost Maleficent in this deck. We have a 3-cost uninkable action song, banish chosen villain of yours to banish chosen character. So obviously this is going to be working with those 1-cost Maleficents. 1-cost Maleficent is actually the only villain character in Ruby or Amethyst, so I think that was kind of interesting to realize that. So it's going to work great with her. And then of course we have those Maleficents are going to be villains. We have the Mother Gothels are going to be villains. Those foxes are going to be villains. That Queen of Hearts is a villain. Snake's a villain, and then you have mostly allies also in that 1-drop slot. So most diabolical scheme is going to be fantastic with this deck, because you're going to have so many targets you could potentially sacrifice to go ahead and just directly banish an opposing character. Sometimes you may play that Maleficent Sorceress and your opponent just goes, okay, Maleficent Sorceress, I'm not worried about that, it's not going to challenge anything, it's not going to be doing anything important, and then they'll develop something like Robin Hood, like, okay, go ahead and quest in or challenge my Robin Hood, go for it, and the next thing you know, your most diabolical scheme, sing it with that Sorceress and just straight up banish something like Robin Hood, Beast, those big Sisus, all that stuff. Take out a Maui. Next up in the 4-drop slot, we are on 3 Merlin Goat, a 4-cost inkable 4/3 stat line questing for 1 with when you play this character and when he leaves play, you're going to gain 1 lore. Great way to close out games and great way to insulate yourself against a Be Prepared. Speaking of insulating yourself against a Be Prepared and fantastic 4-drops, we are back on the play line of playing 4 Merlin Rabbit, a 4-cost uninkable 2/3 stat line questing for 1 with when it enters and when it leaves you're going to draw a card, so it's always replacing itself ×2 no matter what happens, and if they aren't removing it, you are potentially getting some bounce triggers with it. If you need to draw even more additional cards, which is a great time to mention, if you haven't checked out our apparel shop, it is linked in the comments below. We do have those Rabbit Recycler hoodies and shirts. I love that logo, so if you want to check one of those out, it's a little bit of a lead time, but the shirts and the hoodies are very nice quality, and you can rep your favorite Lorcana character, Merlin Rabbit. Next up, jumping over to the 5-cost slot, we are on 3 Maui Hero to All, a 5-cost inkable 6/5 stat line with Rush and Reckless, so he is just going to be absolutely tearing up the field. Great way to deal with pretty much any opposing threat in the game. There's almost nothing Maui doesn't banish that's getting played right now, save for like Chernobog. But you can kill that with most diabolical scheme, which is pretty funny. Next up in the 5-cost slot, we are on 3 Bell Accomplished Mystic, a 5-cost inkable, 4/4 stat line, questing for 2, shifting for 3. Obviously we have no shift target for this Bell in this deck. You could potentially play the 3-cost Bell that moves 1 damage when she comes into play, but she's not a villain, so she didn't necessarily work with the most diabolical scheme, so I ended up opting against it. It's also the reason I didn't play the 4-cost Panic. Not only is a 2/2 stat line, but he's also an ally and not a villain. If he was a villain, definitely would have been in this deck. When Bell comes into play, she is going to be able to go move 3 damage from a chosen character to a chosen opposing character, so the damage has to end up on an opposing character, but she can move it from any character, so you could actually move it from one opposing character to another opposing character if it was beneficial to you. But typically what you're going to be looking to do is moving that 3 damage or 2 damage in some instances from your own character to an opposing character. Next up in the 5-cost slot, and the second to last card in the deck, we are on 2 Elsa the Fifth Spirit, a 5-cost inkable, 2/5 stat line, questing for 1 with Rush and Evasive. Fantastic combination of abilities. And when you play this character, exert chosen opposing character, so she's going to come down, get something exerted and ready to be dealt with, and then let you just go ahead and tear it up off the field. Sometimes she may be able to banish the thing that she taps. She's fantastic against piglets. That's always funny. And the last character in this deck, and this is one that I think is fantastic with that Mother Gothel. You may notice that we're not playing any Be Prepared on this list. Be Prepared has always been a staple in Ruby Amethyst. With this new Mother Gothel build, I want to do something that's going to circumvent expectations. It is also worth noting that Scar is a villain. If you have a Scar with a ton of damage on him that's just wiped out a field, and your opponent plays another character thinking, he's ready, so you can't challenge into him with your Scar, and then you use Scar to sing Most Diabolical, banishing himself and banishing the new character they put down, can be really good. He does quest for 2, so you may just want to go ahead and quest with him instead. Depends on where you're at lore wise, but he is a 7-cost uninkable 6/5 stat line, questing for 2 with Rush, so he's going to come down and just start tearing up the field just like those Mauis. And during your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you may ready this character. He can't quest for the rest of the turn, so you ready him, he can't quest. So basically the idea is you play him, you challenge in, you ready him, you challenge in, you ready him. So you want to challenge the characters that are going to deal the least damage to him first. The thing that potentially makes this deck really interesting is on turn 6 you could potentially be in a position where you're going like Mother Gothel, and then you have 2 Gothels out. You play down that Scar, you challenge in with him, you move 2 damage counters from another character to opposing characters, and then you challenge in with him again, and you get to start moving damage off of the Scar. So potentially actually healing your Scar while he's challenging if you have a Mother Gothel on the board. So I think that combination of abilities is really good. Like I mentioned, Mother Gothel is going to be moving those damage counters before damage is dealt. So if you have 2 damage on him, you have 2 Gothels down, you challenge in, he gets healed fully, that damage gets dispersed on the opposing characters, and then Scar takes out another character, puts a little more damage on him, readies back up, challenges in again, 2 more damage gets moved off of him, so on and so forth. So I think the combination between him and Mother Gothel is worth playing him over Be Prepared in the current meta. I kept the uninkable count on this deck fairly low, so it has a little bit of flexibility as you're going through the game, but it has the ability to deal with pretty much all of those aggro and mid-range decks pretty effectively. I'm more concerned about the Ruby Sapphire matchup in some instances. I may not be gaining lore fast enough, and I'm not playing any locations to try to circumvent their Be Prepared. My main goal is to just kind of out-tempo them, but that could potentially be a losing proposition. We will see. Ruby Sapphire may not be your best matchup, but I think you have a pretty sweet matchup in everything else. Even that Oswald deck with something like Teeth and Ambitions, you can just go, your Oswald's dead. Most Diabolical is going to let you take out their bigger characters, so I think you have a good chance with this deck, and the entire deck list is under $90, so I think that's worth mentioning. If you like this deck list, definitely let me know in the comments below if there's something else you would have played or something that I played that you think is absolutely not worth it. Definitely, as always, let me know. Remember to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the videos. It helps us out a ton to get promoted to other people like you who may enjoy the videos. And when you see those toys, video games, and big old Scars coming back around in the distance, remember, it is not a mirage. You guys have a great day.